The Watchman at the Gate. Also I set watchmen over you, saying, Hearken to the sound of the trumpet. Jeremiah 6:17. We must all have a watchman at the gate of our thoughts. The watchman at the gate is the superconscious mind. We have the power to choose our thoughts. Since we have lived in the race thought for thousands of years, it seems almost impossible to control them. They rush through our minds like stampeding cattle or sheep. But a single sheepdog can control the frightened sheep and guide them into the sheep pen. I saw a picture in the newsreels of a shepherd dog controlling the sheep. He had rounded up all but 3. These 3 resisted and resented. They bawed and lifted their front feet in protest. But the dog simply sat down in front and never took his eyes off them. He did not bark or threaten. He just sat and looked his determination. In a little while the sheep tossed their heads and went in the pen. We can learn to control our thoughts in the same way, by gentle determination, not force. We take an affirmation and repeat it continually while our thoughts are on the rampage. We cannot always control our thoughts, but we can control our words, and repetition impresses the subconscious, and we are then master of the situation. In the 6th chapter of Jeremiah we read, I set a watchman over you, saying, Hearken to the sound of the trumpet. Your success and happiness in life depend upon the watchman at the gate of your thoughts, for your thoughts sooner or later crystallize on the external. People think by running away from a negative situation they will be rid of it, but the same situation confronts them wherever they go. They will meet the same experiences until they have learned their lessons. This idea is brought out in the moving picture The Wizard of Oz. The little girl Dorothy is very unhappy because the mean woman in the village wants to take away her dog Toto. She goes in despair to confide in her Aunt Em and Uncle Henry, but they are too busy to listen. Tell her to run along. She says to Toto, There is somewhere a wonderful place high above the skies where everybody is happy and no one is mean. How she would love to be there. A Kansas cyclone suddenly comes along and she and Toto are lifted up high in the sky and land in the country of Oz. Everything seems very delightful at first, but soon she has the same old experiences. The mean old woman of the village has turned into a terrible witch and is still trying to get Toto from her. How she wishes she were back in Kansas. She is told to find the Wizard of Oz. He is all-powerful and will grant her request. She starts off to find his palace in the Emerald City. On the way, she meets a scarecrow, and he is so unhappy because he hasn't a brain. She meets a man made of tin who is so unhappy because he hasn't a heart. And then she meets a lion who is so unhappy because he has no courage. She cheers them up by saying, We'll all go to the Wizard of Oz and he'll give us what we want. The scarecrow a brain, the tin man a heart, and the lion courage. They encounter terrible experiences, for the bad witch is determined to capture Dorothy and take away Toto and the ruby slippers which protect her. At last they reach the Emerald Palace of the Wizard of Oz. They ask for an audience but are told no one has ever seen the Wizard of Oz, who lives mysteriously in the palace. But through the influence of the Good Witch of the North, they enter the palace. There they discover that the wizard is just a fake magician from Dorothy's hometown in Kansas. They are all in despair because their wishes cannot be granted. But then the Good Witch shows them that their wishes are already granted. The Scarecrow has developed a brain by having to decide what to do in the experiences he has encountered. The Tin Man finds he has a heart because he loves Dorothy. And the Lion has become courageous because he had to show courage in his many adventures. The Good Witch from the North says to Dorothy, What have you learned from your experiences? And Dorothy replies, I have learned that my heart's desire is in my own home and in my own front yard. So the Good Witch waves her wand and Dorothy is at home again. She wakes up and finds that the Scarecrow, the Tin Man, and the Lion are the men who work on her uncle's farm. They are so glad to have her back. This story teaches that if you run away, your problems will run after you. Be undisturbed by a situation, and it will fall away of its own weight. There is an occult law of indifference. None of these things moves me. None of these things disturbs me, we might say in modern language. When you can no longer be disturbed, all disturbance will disappear from the external. When your eyes have seen your teachers disappear. I set watchmen over you, saying, hearken to the sound of the trumpet. A trumpet is a musical instrument used in olden times to draw people's attention to something, to victory, to order. You will form the habit of giving attention to every thought and word when you realize their importance. The imagination, the scissors of the mind, is constantly cutting out the events to come into your life. Many people are cutting out fear pictures, seeing things which are not divinely planned. With a single eye, man sees only the truth. He sees through evil, knowing that out of it comes good. He transmutes injustice into justice and disarms his seeming enemy by sending goodwill. We read in mythology of the Cyclops a race of giants said to have inhabited Sicily. These giants had only one eye in the middle of the forehead. The seat of the imagining faculty is situated in the forehead between the eyes. So these fabled giants came from this idea. You are indeed a giant when you have a single eye. Then every thought will be a constructive thought, and every word a word of power. Let the third eye be the watchman at the gate. If therefore thine eye be single, thy whole body is full of light. With a single eye, your body will be transformed into your spiritual body, the body electric, made in God's likeness and image, imagination. By seeing clearly the perfect plan, we could redeem the world. With our inner eyes, seeing a world of peace and plenty and goodwill. Judge not by appearances, judge righteous judgment. Nation shall not lift up sword against nation, neither shall they learn war any more. The occult law of indifference means that you are undisturbed by adverse appearances. You hold steadily to the constructive thought, which wins out. Spiritual law transcends the law of karma. This is the attitude of mind which must be held by the healer or practitioner towards his patient. Indifferent to appearances of lack, loss, or sickness, he brings about the change in mind, body, and affairs. Let me quote from the 31st chapter of Jeremiah. The keynote is one of rejoicing. It gives a picture of the individual freed from negative thinking. For there shall be a day that the watchman upon the mount Ephraim shall cry, Arise ye, and let us go up to Zion unto the Lord our God. The watchman at the gate neither slumbers nor sleeps. It is the eye which watches over Israel. But the individual living in a world of negative thought is not conscious of this inner eye. He may occasionally have flashes of intuition or illumination, then falls back into a world of chaos. It takes determination and eternal vigilance to check up on words and thoughts. Thoughts of fear, failure, resentment, and ill will must be dissolved and dissipated. Take this statement, every plant my Father in heaven has not planted shall be rooted up. This gives you a vivid picture of rooting up weeds in a garden. They are thrown aside and dry up because they are without soil to nourish them. You nourish negative thoughts by giving them your attention. Use the occult law of indifference and refuse to be interested. Soon you will starve out the army of the aliens. Divine ideas will crowd your consciousness, false ideas fade away, and you will desire only that which God desires through you. The Chinese have a proverb, the philosopher leaves the cut of his coat to the tailor. So leave the plan of your life to the divine designer, and you will find all conditions permanently perfect. The ground I am on is holy ground. I now expand rapidly into the divine plan of my life, where all conditions are permanently perfect.